Okay. And I actually made a slideshow for this one, which is not an often thing because it's not my forte, but this one worked out really well. So we are going to dig in here. Okay. Can everybody see this? Okay. I'm just going to get this up and the chat thread pulled back up, and we're going to rock and roll. So this morning, I wanted to share with you guys some tactics that we can use to incorporate a guilt-free self-care routine. And a large part of this comes from everybody voting on the poll saying that they feel guilty taking time for themselves. So I hope that this is what's going to serve you guys the most today. I would love to see in the chat thread, as I'm kind of just going through my introduction, I would love to see some of the things that you find you hit that brick wall with. When you go to do whatever activity this is, does guilt set in? Because sometimes we have activities that we don't really feel guilty about, but sometimes we have certain activities that we do feel that guilt for, and we're just not able to incorporate them into our regular routine. So I would love to hear what you guys are feeling that with. For those that don't know me, I did actually have a couple of new people register for this workshop. So I just wanted to do a little introduction. I am Trish. I am a certified life coach. And last year I launched my own company, Rise and Thrive Coaching. And I created my own group coaching program called 5 to Thrive. I still work part-time in the hospital as a lab tech. I've got 2 little ones at home, and I have the most supportive husband on the planet. I have to give him a shout out every time because none of this would be possible without him. It would be very far down the road. I am very blessed to have his help at home. So why do we feel so guilty when it comes to self-care? We want to start with, like, what is guilt, right? Guilt is this sense that comes into play when we feel like we failed at something, right? We feel like there's something that we should have some remorse for. We feel like we let somebody else down. We feel like we didn't meet expectations, whether they're our own expectations or expectations that are put on us from others, whether it is your significant other, your family members, your workplace, whatever that is. And for a lot of us, this guilt comes from 3 key components. We all have a mile-high to-do list. There tends to be 75 loads of laundry in the house that need to be folded at all times. And by the time you're caught up and you folded it all needs to be washed again. We have the dishes that need to be done. We need to be cooking. We need to get everybody out of the door on time. We have lunches to make. We have insurance to renew. We have everybody's schedules to keep track of, right? The list does not end. And when we go to bed at the end of the day, if we feel like we didn't complete something, I don't know about you, who has gone to bed at night and you're like, oh, I didn't complete this thing today. It's because I slept in this morning. Right? That's something that I know I used to really struggle with. That was the first thing I'd beat myself up for. If I was catching up on sleep and something didn't get completed on the to-do list, I felt like it was because I slept in. Like immediately we go to, it's because I did this. It's not because we had 75 loads of laundry to do, all the dishes need to be done. We have kids in hockey tournaments and all of these things, right? We immediately go to, well, it's because I did this for me. And then we want our kids to come first, right? I mean, we had kids because we want to spend time with them. It's not because we want to tell them no to anything in our lives. So when they ask us to play Legos with them or to take them to the park, we want to take them. We don't want to tell them no just for us to have something, right? I know that's when I talk to other moms, one of the most common things that we struggle with when it comes to, for example, working out at home is you go to press play and now the kids need something. Oh, they need breakfast. Oh, they need the TV turned on. Oh, all of a sudden they're actually out of underwear. And now you need to put in a load of laundry and it's Saturday. Like they're going to spend the day in their pajamas, but we still feel bad that they don't have this thing in the name of us doing something for ourselves. And at the end of the day, most of us just feel like there's just not enough hours in a day. We go to bed at the end of the day just feeling that immense sense of defeat. We have that feeling that we failed. We didn't get all of the to-do list done. We forgot to read bedtime stories to the kids. Like, it's very easy for us to start to beat ourselves up. And this is where all of the guilt comes in. When we think about taking time for ourselves, we have this mile-long list of all of the things, like we're being pulled in a million directions between the to-do list, our kids, between work and home, and trying to have time for ourselves, right? And the obvious answer is just ask for help, right? That's what anybody, when we complain about how busy we are, they just say, oh, why don't you just take something off your plate? But it's not that easy, right? I think most of us struggle with gender norms. We have pink jobs and we have blue jobs. And the pink jobs, if we kind of break everything down, and we are starting to get away from this stuff, but it is still pretty prevalent for a lot of people. We look at the pink jobs are the small monotonous tasks, right? It's doing the dishes, it's doing the laundry, is getting people out of the door on time. Like, they look little, but when we know that when you stack them all up, there's actually quite a lot, but they're the daily tasks. So we feel silly asking for help when it's something that we know is only going to take us 10 minutes. Oh, it's only going to be 5 minutes. It's not a big deal. It's on my way to work, whatever. We minimize the tasks that we're doing to justify not asking for help. And when we look at men, the blue jobs tend to be these like sporadic physical laborious jobs, like shoveling the driveway, fixing the snowblower, stuff like that, right? So we feel like they do enough. So we don't ask for help. We have a ton of mom shame online. This comes from people have like the kindest intentions behind this, but when they share tough love quotes, like I shared the other day, the concept that, well, your kids should be your reason why, not your excuse not to. But if we have that previous guilt-ridden like feeling that the kids need to come first, just telling somebody that, well, this should be the way that it is, we feel guilty that we can't connect with that, while also feeling guilty that we haven't done the mile high to-do list. And it doesn't just fix it, right? We can't just tell someone to change their belief system. It's not what the problem is, right? And while that might be something that motivates somebody now, it's probably not what motivated them in the beginning. And people tend to forget that. But we feel so much shame when we scroll social media and we see everybody's highlight reel, right? We see other people that are crushing their workouts, they're working full-time jobs, they're running a side business, they seem to chair every committee that their kids belong to, the different sports, like you're volunteering for figure skating and you're coaching for soccer and you're on the parent committee at the school. Like, we see these people doing all these things and we're like, well, she doesn't seem to be asking for help. Like, she's crushing everything. If I ask for help, then I'm weak, right? We start to make up these stories in our head that, like, the comparison game, and it makes it feel like, well, I just want to be able to do it. I want to look as awesome as she does. I want this to just flow. So we don't ask for help. And then we have societal pressure. It is 2023. And in 1920, roughly, whenever World War I happened, men went off to war, women went to work because it was needed. And while the men were away, we had to work and take care of the house and keep the kids alive. And when the men came back, that didn't go away. We stayed in the workforce. We stayed in the workforce and stayed doing our pink jobs. It's been a century, and we are only just starting to undo some of those like societal expectations that women don't do physical labor jobs. So it shouldn't be so hard for them to come home and do all of the pink jobs that we've deemed are also not physically laborious, right? But it's this expectation that working moms are supposed to work as if they don't have kids, but also raise their kids as if they don't work. And that's the norm now, right? Our kids should be in all of the sports. It's developmentally good for them. And then you also have to volunteer. But when you go to work, you're expected to cover sick calls. You're expected to take overtime. It's not viewed as a problem for you to skip your lunch break because you can eat when you get home, but they don't know that when you get home, you actually have to pick up your kids from daycare, run to the arena. You're at the arena for 4 hours, and then you're all going to get home at 10 o'clock at night. Like, we just have such high expectations of us, and it's viewed as just part of the job, right? We have a lot of people that tell us like, yeah, it's just part of being a mom. So then we feel silly when we ask for help when it's something that realistically is taxing. A lot of us have mentally and emotionally draining jobs, and then we come home and we're asked to do a lot of mentally and emotionally draining things. But it's difficult for us to ask for help, and it's difficult for us to say no to other people because we have such high expectations of ourselves. They've been drilled into us over time, right? And especially if you're an older sibling, being raised, being told you need to set an example, you need to set a good example, right? Like that's instilled in us very early on, so that we carry that with us for the rest of our life. This expectation that we should just say yes, misery is part of life, and everything is okay. And I want to share a little bit of my experience with this with you guys, because I was that person. I am the older sibling. I was raised with the, you should set a good expectation. These are the things that you should do. Lots of shoulds. And when I graduated, it just carried and it stacked. Like as you enter, like getting engaged. Now there's expectations as a wife, and we have expectations as a mom, and everything just like continues to compound. And the difficult piece is that we just continue to think, oh, well, it's one more thing, it's not a big deal. And I used to struggle with asking for help because I had so much weight I was carrying, and I just assumed that everybody else also had this weight. Everybody is struggling. It's very easy in our heads for us to feel like, if this is the way it is for me, it's probably this way for everybody else, right? That's where the concept of like, this is common sense. Why wouldn't everybody else think of this, right? Our brains naturally kind of go that route. So we take what we're living and experiencing, and sometimes we deflect it out onto others. So I used to struggle with asking for help because I felt like everybody else had enough on their plate and I don't want to burden them. And that existed even with my husband. And I remember going to the counselor, and my counselor was away, and I was struggling hard that day. And I got in with somebody that I don't normally see, and I told her like everything that was on my plate, and these are all the things that are weighing down on me. And she defaulted to that, well, can't you just get your husband to do that? Like it minimized everything that I'm going through so quickly, and didn't address the fact that to me, I couldn't pass it off. Because to me, if I was passing it off, I didn't know if it was going to get done. How many of us ask our husbands to do the dishes, and tomorrow morning we wake up and they're still there, and he's like, well, I said I was going to do them, I'll do them before I go to work, right? To them, it's not a big deal because they don't care when it gets done as long as it gets done. But for a lot of us, and I still have some things that I actually do this with, I cannot relinquish paying the bills. I don't think that I could sleep at night being like, did he pay? Did he pay hydro? Like, did he pay rent? Ironically, I've forgot to send rent a couple of times, and it would probably be fine to delegate it to him. But it's a difficult thing for us to do. So it's not as simple as just saying, okay, we'll just pass it off. But I did get to a point where I had to. I was struggling very hard with postpartum depression, and I physically could not do all of the things anymore because I couldn't cope with a lot of things. So I wasn't really given any choice anymore. And sometimes we are put into that place, and that's where our breakthrough happens, because I had to start asking for help. So I started asking Dan, and we laid the boundary that if I'm asking you for help, it's because I need it. I don't like asking for help. So if I am, like, I need you to say yes, and I need you to do it because I am crumbling. I am breaking. Like I was like, it's life or death if I ask you to do the dishes. That was the only way I felt comfortable even asking for help. And over time, I started to see that, sometimes he's going to do the dishes an hour or two later than I would. And it started to kind of normalize it for me to the point that I felt comfortable asking our moms for extras. And growing up, my mom always said yes, like to everything. If we needed to be picked up, if we needed to be dropped off, if we needed lunch dropped off, like she always said yes. And with my mother-in-law, I didn't really know because I didn't grow up with her. So for me, I just asked them equally all the time. I would tend to ask my mom first because she's my comfort zone. And eventually we got to this point where I didn't even want to ask her anymore because I could see that how often she was saying yes was burning her out. Because I would ask her to watch Zoe for something, and when I would come pick her up, my mom was short and snappy. And she hadn't been like that, like as grandma. That's not a default for us to be, right? You only get the kids every once in a while, so our fuse isn't as short. But I could see that me asking for help was burning her out. Like she could not say no. Whereas with my mother-in-law, initially it used to actually shock me when she would tell me no, because I was so used to hearing yes, and I was so used to saying yes, that to me, I just thought, well, when I ask somebody for help, they're going to say yes. And it took some time for me to finally see the balance that my mother-in-law could set boundaries and say, I can't right now, but I can later, but I can another time. Ask me next week. I have an appointment. I have a get together with friends. I'm tired. Like she used to set that boundary, and I could see that my mom wasn't. And I got to a point where it flipped, and I would ask my mother-in-law first because I didn't feel I was inconveniencing her. So what we have happen is we have two kinds of people in our lives. We have people that will ask us to do everything because they know we're going to say yes. But we also have people in our lives that won't ask us for help even when they desperately need it, because they know that we're going to burn ourselves out doing it. So when we talk about saying no to other people to say yes to yourself, we very easily on a surface level look at it as, well, yeah, I only have so much time in a day. If I say no to them, then like maybe I can get out for my walk, right? But we need to practice this skill set to actually build that belief in ourselves that while we can set boundaries, we trust that other people will set that boundary as well, so that we don't feel like we're inconveniencing them. Because a lot of times that's what holds us back from actually asking for the help that we need. And like I said, we tend to believe that whatever we do is what other people are doing. So if we don't build boundaries ourselves, we can't trust that other people are going to build boundaries with us. So one of the key components with this is having that conversation. When we need to kind of start to ease our way into actually asking for help, it's important to have that conversation with somebody, not to the extreme that I did with Dan, saying like, it's life or death. Like if I ask, it's because I need it. But to let people know that when I ask for help, I just need to know that you'll tell me no if you can't, because that's what makes me feel comfortable asking for help. And that's what allows us to start to ask for help and release the guilt that comes from us taking time for ourselves. When we look at taking a weekend away with girlfriends, now we don't feel bad that we've left for the weekend. We don't have that mom guilt that's weighing us down saying like, well, you should be at home. This is hard for your husband. If he said yes, then we have to just trust that he was okay with it, right? Because we've set that boundary. So this is where that concept is really important. And the issue isn't whether we get out for a girls' weekend or whether we get an hour in the bubble bath at night. The issue comes in with the fact that we aren't setting these boundaries or asking for help when it comes to our basic human needs, right? We don't tell people no when we need to go to the washroom at work sometimes. We will hold it in until we're concerned that a sneeze is going to be problematic. And it's not until we're at this critical point that we will tell people no. So what we need to start doing is we need to start prioritizing true self-care, making sure that we're eating, making sure that we're getting enough sleep, making sure that we're moving our bodies. Those three things, if we view a lot of people equate, like right now, they feel like they're barely keeping their head above water. They're barely surviving. And if we can look at ladies' night out and bubble baths as little like floaties on your arms, and moving your body, eating and sleeping as the life jacket that is like cinched tight to your core. The water wings are awesome, but they're not what's going to stop us from feeling like we're just barely surviving day to day. So what I want to do with you guys today, so we've addressed how we can release the guilt around it, but I also want to take some time with you guys. I don't think that I have anything else on the slideshow, so I'm going to stop share here actually, so I can just see everybody. So we're going to do some journaling questions. And if you don't have a pen or a paper, I just want to pull them out so that we don't miss them here. If you don't have a pen and paper, you can just type it into the chat thread if you're comfortable sharing it with everybody. If you're not comfortable sharing it with everyone, you're able to actually change it so that it only sends it to me in the chat thread. Whatever works for you guys, the practice is still effective no matter what you're doing. So we want to look at, what does your current self-care routine look like? What do you define as self-care for yourself? And there's no, I'm gonna start this journaling session saying there's no right or wrong answers. There is no, there's no comparison here. Everybody's answers are going to be different. Brad says showers and cutting nails is self-care. Tisha has massage. I'm just meaning that's supposed to be massage, or hot bath, or a walk in nature. Those are very grounding activities. Those are great. Yes, Lee says self-care consists of journaling and getting outside when I can. That's another good, a grounding combo. Becca says massages and getting pedicures and snowmobiling is huge in this season. Snowmobiling is a form of self-care when we don't hurt ourselves. Use and abuse our bodies, but it still feels so good. So then I want to hear, what are some attending these webinars? They are a good form of self-care. It's the personal development side of things, right? So then we want to look at, what hurdles do you face when you incorporate those activities? So when you think, when I go for my massage, what comes up that prevents me from doing that? When I go to sit down to journal, what's something that prevents me from doing that? Same thing, like with bathing, right? A lot of times, Jackson's 5 and still wants to have a bath with me, so I refuse to do it while he's awake because I can't explain to him, this isn't appropriate, bud. You're at an old enough age. It's not happening anymore. Doing daily workouts, that's a good release. Putting kiddos first, or choosing activities that your child would enjoy versus what you'd enjoy. Mind a lot of the time. Journaling feels like a huge mental burden. Ooh, Becca. Ooh, that's a good one. It's funny how we can have, I want to kind of go on a little bit of a side tangent on that one with everybody, because when we journal, it tends to be because there's so much going on in here. I equate it to fireworks going off in my brain. And the concept of journaling is to be able to get it all out. But to get it out feels overwhelming. And it's a tricky kind of place to be when we see something that's supposed to be self-care as something else on our plate. That's where we really struggle. End of the day, when you put your feet up and turn off, don't want to move. Yes, lack of motivation is a big struggle point for a lot of people. And that one doesn't necessarily come from guilt, but sometimes we feel guilty that we aren't doing the things because we feel lazy, right? So then I want to ask you guys, why is it a problem? That thing that presents itself, why is it a problem for you? And this one might take a minute to have an answer, and that's okay. We can reflect on it. I did shoulders this morning, and this water bottle is just killing me. I can't find my other one. I used to really struggle with the laundry being on the couch. That was something I couldn't do my workout if there was clutter in my vision. It took a while for me to think, I'll just leave it in the laundry room. I still do things like Tisha sees when we're on Zoom in the morning. I still do things like I can't have the blankets not folded on the couch. So in between reps, I still have a little bit of like, I just can't work in clutter, which I think comes from how cluttered the lab is at the end of the day. Like, I can't have this at home. Yesley said it's a problem because I need to be able to put myself first versus feeling like I'm always sacrificing myself for everyone else. Tisha also leaves herself till last. I want to give everybody else a minute just in case their answer didn't come right away. Brad says he's just done with moving. 7 to 9 is sitting on the couch on the lazy boy watching the TV, scrolling for no reason, just burned out. House is clean, dishes are done, kids in bed. So it feels like the to-do list is done and that's it for the day then. So what we have happen is we started this out with guilt, right? And we can see that we're sacrificing ourselves. And what ends up happening is when we combine sacrifice with guilt, over time, we very easily get to a point of resentment, right? We start to be angry that, well, my husband doesn't just see the dishes and think to do them. He doesn't understand everything that I do. And I'm going to pick on husbands at first because that's the most prevalent. I think everybody relates to that. But it also happens at work. When we're sacrificing our meal breaks, and we feel guilty saying no to overtime, so we take it all, and then our employer expects more from us. We feel like they don't appreciate us, so we start to resent it. And when we have this combination of sacrifice and guilt and resentment, that's when we reach burnout. And when we're burnt out, we are overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, we enter fight, flight, or freeze. So that's where we get to this point where we fight, we put our head down, and we just keep doing it. I can do this until I get to time off. I can do this until the weekend. I can just get through because I'm going to have time off. But then oftentimes, because we're burnt out, the second we have downtime, our body shuts down and tells us that we're going to have some downtime, because it knows that even as soon as we have downtime, we'll find something else to do. So it tells us that we're down. And it creates this problem where it's okay, Becca. we'll work on that one later. It creates this problem where we can't even choose what we're going to do. And then we have flight, right? So when we think about going to do something for ourselves, we go and do something else. I don't know where to start, so I'm actually just going to go do the thing that I know how to do. And then we have freeze. And what happens with freeze is that's when we start shutting down. And this is different for everybody, and you might experience all three depending on your level of burnout. But when we hit freeze, that's when we're in the kitchen and we don't know what to cook for dinner. And so we pull out the cereal and we go and we lay on the couch, and at least the kids are fed, but we don't want to eat because we don't know what we want to eat. So then, because we don't know what we want to eat, eventually our body is just like, you need to feed me. So we walk to the pantry and we grab the first thing that we want. We don't know what the point of getting up in the morning is because we don't know what we're going to do. So we sleep in more than we want to or need to, right? This is where we start entering like 12 hours of sleep, but I still feel tired. This is where we enter this realm when we're burnt out and we're doing one self-care activity and we don't see the benefit of it, we say, well, what's the point? So then we don't bother with any of it. And like I said earlier, we have these 5 key components to our self-care, right? We need to move our bodies. And that doesn't mean burning 500 calories, right? It can be something as little as walking around the block. It can be something as little as doing some child's pose, the downward dog, just the concept of moving our body. We also need to nourish our bodies, right? We need to eat. And if you're somebody that struggles with eating enough in a day, I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter what you're eating. Just fuel your body. Your body needs calories. We struggle with sleep. When we struggle with sleep, our ability to cope with anything is next to zero. That's where when the kids are up at night, like when you have a newborn, remember how short your fuse is? A lot of us are entering that when we prioritize the to-do list above sleep. And we need things like getting out and having connection time with people that aren't demanding of us. It was really nice. I had been going for lunch with clients and I went for lunch with just a friend and I was like, wow, this is a different vibe. And we need to be able to give ourselves that break to actually just like step away from work, step away from responsibilities. Like it has value in it. And we need to work on our mindset. Because at the end of the day, if we don't put in that work to shift our mindset, we're not going to have things like today, like Becca said, that she had that light bulb moment at the beginning of the call, connecting the dots. That was what you said. We need something that's going to help us click, something that's going to help us create that breakthrough, right? Because a lot of us are stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. And in that moment, we can't problem solve. We can't see that there's another way. And that's why, like when I do 5 to Thrive, we always have space at the end. And we have lots of time this morning. We still have half an hour left. So I would love to give the opportunity for somebody to get coached through this right now. For somebody that feels like they just can't release the guilt. They can't get motivated. They can't just release all of those expectations. I would love to give you 20 minutes right now to just dig into it and unpack it. Does anybody want to volunteer? It's also okay if you're not comfortable because it's a room full of strangers. That's okay. Does everybody feel like this helped? Do you have a little bit of clarity on where the guilt is coming from and why we need to say no to others? Good. Is it okay if I share a little bit with you guys about what I have coming up with the next round of 5 to Thrive? This is going to be very similar to what we just kind of talked about here. So I'm gonna swap my screens around here and I'll pull up. I made another pretty thing, so have to share the pretty things. So what we have with 5 to Thrive, I've made a pretty big shift this round with it. I'm doing a 5-day crash course. And what that crash course talks about, when I talk about energy equilibrium, it's having a routine that doesn't drain your energy, right? A lot of times we sacrifice sleep to get in the gym. We sacrifice eating so that we can sleep. Like we need to be able to create a self-care routine that actually serves all of our basic human needs. So in that first 5 days, we tackle that. And the goal with that is that after the first week, you have a baseline foundation to work from for the next 3 months, because everything takes time to actually set in. So what we have happen is we have 5 days of webinars similar to this. So I'll be teaching on the premise behind each pillar. Like I said, movement, we need to nourish our bodies, we need recharge time, we need connection, we need mindset work. So creating that foundation with those, having some journaling time for you guys to assess, like, what is your answer? Because it's different for everybody. Some people want that time at the gym. Some people just want to get out for a walk, right? So that's kind of an example of the difference between everybody. It's very easy for us to say, I don't know where to start. So then we just go to Instagram and we follow somebody else because they must know what they're doing, right? So this is all about tuning into your energy. This also will highlight things like, if you find that you struggle getting up in the morning, why are we waking up at 5 a.m.? right? If that's not your energy zone, then we're creating so much resistance for ourselves. So we also address energy drains, and we want to be able to remove those as soon as possible. And the goal is that after week one, you'll actually have some energy back. And then we have weekly breakthrough group coaching sessions. So that's very similar to this. It's having that space where you can come in and we do some journaling together. If there's common themes throughout the group, I try to do like how we did the guilt-free webinar at the beginning of this. We do some mindset work on that, and then we go back into coaching. And what this does is it creates a space for somebody to have real-time problems addressed. Because as we overcome one thing, we're going to face something else. So we can see, like with guilt, we can overcome the guilt, but then I don't know what self-care looks like for me, right? So then now we need to deal with self-care. And then maybe within the self-care, we're still experiencing some resistance. So then we need to do some more energy work. So it kind of like, it gives space for people to deal with things as they come up. And that's why we do 3 months, because it's going to take some time to uncover the things that we actually struggle with. Direct texting support is a big one, for people to feel like they have that, today is hard, I don't know what to do about this. For anybody that has time to read this testimonial over here, that was something that this client was struggling with. She'd had an injury that week, and just every day was a bit of a struggle. There was some downtime, and they're just working through it with her, giving her some suggestions to work through. So having that constant support so that you don't feel like you have to do anything alone. I tend to get back to people on average within an hour. So you're getting that pretty real time stuff. And then I also added in with this round a one-on-one breakthrough session. So what this means is that anywhere in that 3 months, you have the opportunity to get on a call with just me for anywhere. It's normally like 40 minutes to do a full breakthrough session. Depending on the struggle, it can be up to an hour. So it's like a lifeline. You can use it whenever you need it. If you're like, I'm burnt the F out, I need this first off the gates. If you do the 5 days and you're like, I've got this, but we get to the end of month 3 and you're like, I still just can't overcome this one thing, that leaves that. I also have my own planner that I've built, so you'll get that. Part of the energy equilibrium is time blocking, so that we're able to see where our self-care fits in. So those are the things that are all included with the program. And if you were to do the program with me one-on-one, obviously it costs quite a bit more, right? We start to look at, this is all of the time and energy going into one person. It would be like $3,400 for me to say, this is the work I'm going to do with you over the next 3 months. That's not feasible for like 99.9% of the population right now. Also, when you're doing things as a group, it's a lot easier. Like we're splitting time and stuff like that. So I dropped the price down to $999. For you guys being on the webinar, giving me some of your time Saturday morning, I super appreciate this because I know it's early for some of you. I want to do 10% off. So it would be $900 to join me for 3 months. So I do have payment plans available as well, because I know that sometimes that can be a little bit to drop all at once. And I would rather you do a payment plan than pay 20% interest on a credit card, because that's something that I hate doing. So that's the option that's available there. If anybody is looking at this and they're like, I only need one thing, reach out and we can talk about it afterwards. Definitely flexible. It's been the nice part with running my own business, is I can pretty much do whatever I want. So that's what I've got coming up. Kicking off the first round on Monday. So it is coming up right away. I was hoping Thursday night was going to work out, but technical things and whatever. So we've got the weekend to think on it. If anybody has any questions or you want to hop on the phone with me just to ask like if this is beneficial for you, I'm happy to do that. I've got all sorts of time today. I can chat on the phone while I'm folding laundry and stuff. So the phone is quite a bit easier than Zoom. But yeah, does anybody have any questions about the webinar or the program?
Not specifically, no, but I do think it's pretty awesome how you've explained it, and the whole energy equilibrium. I do love that. I feel like so much of our life we go against and against and against, you know, our own momentum a lot of the time. So I think it's awesome that, you know, to put it in that way, to work with your energy, not against it. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And I didn't volunteer because I just did a session with you and I wanted to give somebody else a chance.
Appreciate it. It was a good session too, so it's okay. Okay, before we hop off, does anybody else have anything? Go get on with your days, fill your cup, take some time for self-care. I appreciate everybody hopping on for just so very much. I'll check in with everybody one-on-one just to make sure that you're all doing okay after this, and I'll send the replay out as well. So if you're like, oh, I missed taking notes in this one section, or if you just want to listen to it like daily until the message really sets in, you have that option to do that. So I will talk to everybody later. Much love. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.